Yeah, it's good. Well, man, again, it's great to meet you. And I want to begin our conversation before we get into your world as a consultant by asking you,
Mhm.
4 years ago, we were looking at this pandemic, trying to figure out how it was all going to hash out. How did you make it through that time period and how did it change you?
So that's a great question. On like the personal level, so I was still living in Seattle when the pandemic hit. I'm from there, and as you can see, I like warmer weather. That's why I live in Fort Lauderdale. But I wasn't planning on being back from. I moved from Arizona back to Seattle, and then the pandemic hit, and I had a good job, and I was like, I'm just gonna feel this out. Um, the pandemic was interesting for me because I had a mega corporate job at the time, and my job involved meeting clients at like big enterprise level clients in Seattle, right? Like T-Mobile, Microsoft, Boeing, Starbucks. But I couldn't go to my meetings, right? And then things in supply chain were so halted that like I would call my teammate and be like, "Hey, are you doing anything?" And he's like, "No, are you?" And I was like, "No, but they keep giving us money and there's literally nothing for us to do." And so I'll admit, like I during the pandemic, like I kind of went through a down in, I would say I drank a lot more than I normally did. And I think part of it was out of like a little bit of anxiety and then boredom because I was essentially on corporate welfare, right?
Yeah.
And exiting the pandemic, I actually quit drinking altogether. And so it's been almost 2 years now. And I got cleaned up. I moved out of Washington and started my own business. And so things have just kind of stacked. And it's been a good change, I think.
So talk to me a little bit about what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. One of the kids is
Okay.
curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Okay. Well, I would say, young man or girl, I help businesses build their credit score, their business credit score. And I do that through providing and establishing corporate credit lines for them. So they have none of their personal finances that are at risk in their business.
So take me back to where you were born and raised. How did these seeds get into you to work with businesses and help them get to a better place? How did all this kind of evolve into you now?
That's a good question. So I guess I've always liked working and having a job because I've always valued my independence. So even when I was a little kid, my dad is a CFO, and I would go to work with my dad, and I asked my dad like, "How can I make money?" I was like 8, and so he had me like pushing like mailers into envelopes and just very basic stuff. And I used to work with my dad like 1 or 2 days a week when I was a really little kid, and he would just like pay me out of his pocket. Um, and then when I graduated college and I moved to Arizona, so I got my bachelor's degree at University of Washington. I got my big corporate job down in Phoenix, Arizona. I was frustrated a couple months in because I was barely getting by, and I was like, I have my degree, I have my big fancy job, and I'm living in Phoenix, Arizona. It's not like I'm in Beverly Hills. I can barely afford an apartment here. And then I picked up a very famous book that a lot of people read called Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? And then Cash Flow Quadrant shortly thereafter. And I started doing mobile home flips because I didn't have enough capital to do a single family house. I was in my early 20s. And when I went to the bank with my new entity and I said, "Hey, I need credit lines for my business." And they were like, "Oh, well, you need like 3 years of financials and a whole like laundry list of stuff before we give you credit lines." And I was like, well, crap, I need money. And so what I did was I took out more personal credit cards and I ripped cash off of credit cards. And then I was doing business with my personal credit. And on my fourth deal, I went belly up and I was on the hook for like 64 grand, and I had like $4 or $5,000 in my bank account, and I was totally screwed. Um, and I had no idea what I was going to do. And I had to move back to Seattle, which is like kind of during that pre-COVID era. And so I moved back in with my parents with my tail between my legs. I had to sleep in my little sister's old room because she had occupied my room, which was still pink. And I was sleeping on a twin size bed meant for a 12-year-old girl. So you could say it was a very humbling time. Like my friends were doing well and getting married. And like, one of my friends bought a Porsche. And I was like, oh my God, I'm broke and I live with my parents. And here I was trying to make more money
Yeah.
and get a better life for myself. So I messed up my credit like for 2 years. I was in financial jail, right? I couldn't rent an apartment. I couldn't get a car loan. So I got back into corporate America, paid off my bills, moved out again, started saving up my money. Um, and then this opportunity came about where they were like, hey, we build corporate credit lines and do business credit scores with no personal guarantees. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah. And I said, where were you guys in 2016? Like I had just lived through this era of hardship financially because I had personal guarantees in my business. Um, and everybody, by the way, has a sob story at Jay Galt. Like mine's not even the worst one. Like our CMO got in a motorcycle accident and was in a coma in the hospital, and his business partner basically bankrupted him,
Wow.
because he had his personal guarantees, and a dozen other stories I could tell you. So I really loved opening a practice with Jay Galt because I have lived through this thing, this whole scenario before, and I love that what we do like can just rocket ship somebody's business and life, um, getting access to more money that's less in interest, not having their personal finances tied into their business entity. So that way, not that I'm saying that someone should bankrupt their business, but if your business, if you lose a big customer or something and you are in a financial hardship with the business, it stays in the business, and your house, your cash, your assets aren't tied into it.
So along your journey in business, who's been a hero for you?
A hero for me in business. I would actually, to be honest, like I know we mentioned him earlier, but Patrick Bet David is
Yeah.
sort of an aspiring person. I've been following him for years, and I just really love what he does and his messaging.
So you may have already answered this question. If you could meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, spend some time with them, who would it be?
One person, I think I'd probably want to spend time with Elon Musk.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
They should
fascinated by that guy.
they should have a camera on him. That's everybody's answer is Elon Musk, but I think there would be too many things that he wouldn't want to get out there, but I think a lot of people would tune in for sure. Um,
Yeah.
so what is your motivation every day? What gets you up? What gets you to do the work that you do to help your clients and to also evolve as a person yourself? What is that motivation?
Well, so, I have to build my business every day, right? Otherwise, I don't get to eat. So it's a much more, I think, rewarding way to live because Kevin O'Leary is famous for quoting this that the salary is the most addictive drug they can give you, right? And I came from corporate America. So it's really easy to be complacent when you have a salary and benefits. Like you can kind of be the worst version of yourself in many ways because you just know, like, my bills are getting paid and da, da, da. So I really like it. It kind of just creates a new way of looking at every day when you're a self-employed person, because you have to be the best version of yourself always, right? Like I'm involved in Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce. Like every time I'm out in public, I'm driving somewhere, I am knowing that I'm my own brand here. And, if you yell at somebody or whatever, I don't want to create a bad brand for myself. So like just knowing that you're your own brand, you have to get out, do stuff, network, be creative. Like so in summary, I don't sleep as much as I used to on a salary.
Yeah, for sure. So what's been one of your favorite client success stories?
One of our clients, I think is incredible. So he has a business it does $15 million a year in revenue. He has 2 million in personal guarantees that are keeping him up at night, obviously.
Yeah.
And we're in the transition period with him. It's almost done where that is now over to his entity and not on him as an individual. And it is refied at a much lower interest rate. So now his cash flow is wider every month. Um, and he's personally protected, and it's like just a true and proven thing.
So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, ran into the younger 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life up to this point, what advice would you give your younger self? And would that version of you listen?
That version of myself, I don't think would listen to a 33-year-old Brian. Because when I was 18, I was like, I just wanted to party and be social and be stupid, for a lack of a better term. Um, but I don't know, like I probably would have told myself like, sell your car and buy Bitcoin. Um, like something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't think myself would have listened though. But I probably would have said that if I could go back to my 18-year-old self. I'll like just put everything you have into Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and it'll be okay once you're like 27 or 28 years old.
Yeah, for sure. So of all of these things that you've done in your life and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
Um, I think I'm proudest of the fact that I'm like willing to better myself and change, and that I no longer really care about appeasing other people. Because I was really trapped in that for a while, and even like drinking, right, is a lot of the reasons I quit drinking was it made me more sick than it made me feel good. But
Yeah.
I was doing it because everyone else was doing it, and you didn't want to feel weird or awkward or anything. Um, and I was like, wow, I'm like kind of hurting myself to some degree to appease other people. And I just don't think that I'm never stuck in a place or a mindset anymore. Um, I can be very agile and in evolving, I guess.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm somebody who has definitely, been around the block and made some mistakes and was living in a very negative vibration, I guess you could say. But I realized that that isn't something that defines me forever. So, I would say that I find myself very driven and humble and just focused on what Brian needs to do and not what my friends or my peers want me to do.
So we get off this call here, a time machine pulls up in front of your house. You can go back in time and see one event in human history, or you can see what's going on in the future. Where do you want to go?
Ooh, I guess I would probably want to go into the future.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense with Elon Musk because that he's creating the future. So,
Yeah, well, and like I said, is like I used to be a very anxious person, and they say that anxiety comes from thinking about the future,
yeah.
and depression comes from thinking about the past.
Yeah.
So for me, it would, I think, if I could get a glimpse into the future, it would help me prepare for whatever event that was.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone wants to hire you, look into your world, reach out. What's the good business? Where can they go?
Yeah, so this is my practice is under Jay Galt. So somebody could email me at my first initial last name. So B Trask, BTRASK at jgalt.io. And my website is jgalt.io/btrask as well. If they want to check out, I have a free ebook on there on
Okay.
what we provide. So someone can take a little dive into it.
Excellent. I'll get that all in the show notes. Brian, great to meet you, man. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir. Thank you.